Times front page for Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo.
I've come to report on the state of the nation, the state of the union. And my report is this: the state of the union is strong because you, the American people, are strong.
President Biden used his first State of the Union address to try and reassure a nation that's doubted his leadership and been anxious about an escalating war in Europe and surging inflation at home. Biden's speech in front of a still spaced out but more normal-looking House of Representatives chamber had some revelatory moments, Jeff Murdoch reports. The president announced that the U.S. will close its skies to Russian aircraft, escalating the efforts to punish Russia for the ongoing war in Ukraine. The move follows similar action earlier this week by Canada and the European Union, which Biden said showed the strength of America and its allies.
He thought the West and NATO wouldn't respond. He thought he could divide us at home, in this chamber, in this nation. He thought he could divide us in Europe as well. But Putin was wrong. We are ready. We are united, and that's what we did. We stayed united.
The president also tried to individually lay out support for policies that were included in his Build Back Better plan that failed in Congress, including clean energy and cost reduction for childcare and prescription drugs. Perhaps his biggest combined applause of the night came from encouraging the funding of police forces nationwide, a departure from the politically toxic defund the police cry that's come from progressive circles of the Democratic Party.
We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police. It's to fund the police. Fund them.
Now to the ongoing war in Ukraine, where violent explosions rocked its two largest cities as Russia dramatically escalated its invasion in the face of hardening global resolve against Vladimir Putin's actions. Guy Taylor, Tom Howell, and Mike Glenn report the area around the main television broadcasting tower in Kyiv burst into flames after Russia announced it would target transmission facilities used by Ukraine's intelligence agency. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky described the strikes as a campaign of terror that nobody will forgive. He also spoke for the second time since the invasion began with President Biden. Russia continues to be isolated by the world, beset by sanctions that have thrown its economy into turmoil and left it practically friendless apart from a few nations. In one of those examples, more than 100 diplomats walked out of a pre-recorded speech by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov that was shown via teleconference to a United Nations Human Rights Forum in Geneva, Switzerland. In another fallout from the war in Ukraine, President Biden has moved to soften an expected blow from spiking oil prices by authorizing the release of 30 million barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Valerie Richardson and Tom Howell report International Energy Agency member states undertook a broader effort by collectively releasing an initial 60 million barrels of crude oil from their respective reserves. Republican lawmakers are calling for the president to loosen his grip on domestic oil and gas production, starting with lifting restrictions on federal leasing and reversing his cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline. The U.S. imported 245 million barrels of Russian crude oil and petroleum products last year, a surge of about 24% over 2020, according to preliminary figures released this week by the Energy Information Administration. A reminder that you can find all these stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page. If you don't have access to the Times yet, you can visit WashingtonTimes.com/George for a special subscription offer. With sharp rises in energy costs in recent months, several congressional Democrats have made financial investments in energy companies with large fossil fuel portfolios. That's according to financial disclosures reviewed by R. Ramsey Touchberry, who notes some of these investments contradict their political positions that support clean energy. The list of Democratic representatives who have sold or made investments through stocks or mutual funds in recent months involving fossil fuel companies includes Florida's Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Lois Frankel, Virginia's Don Beyer, New Jersey's Bill Pascrell, Colorado's Ed Perlmutter, and New York's Thomas Suozzi. Members are not required to report exact dollar figures, only ranges. All told, the group has purchased or sold more than $200,000 in fossil fuel-related investments since December. And finally, as driving picks back up nationwide, motorists are hitting the road and running straight into higher car insurance rates that show no sign of declining this year. Sean Salai reports pent-up demand for new and used cars after a year of pandemic-reduced driving is boosting risk for auto insurers, who economists say pass the cost of those risks to consumers, regardless of accident and claims records. Automobile insurers generally increase their annual rates by 3% each year, but studies from Insurify and S&P Global Market Intelligence show that they rose 12% last year. Insurify predicts a 5% hike in rates for this year. Find all of today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or in the Washington Times app, and find us on any major podcast platform. Just search Washington Times in your favorite podcast app. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.